Yo, Trojan family, what's going on? Welcome back to the USC LAFB show here on the LAFB Network. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Hope everyone is doing well. Eve of spring practice number 3. I'll be back on campus tomorrow. Excited, can't wait. But got a lot of recruiting updates for you as we head into a very busy weekend for USC. I feel like, the springtime is so much fun for recruiting. Last year was like crazy because of the amount of commitments USC was taking, the amount of recruits were taking in the class. This year won't be as crazy, but still, we're talking all blue chip players. We're talking visitors every single weekend, seemingly, for unofficial and then official visits starting at the end of May. So tons of recruiting news and updates will be coming at you every single week right here on the USC LAFB YouTube channel and on LAFBnetwork.com on our message board. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe here on YouTube. Sign up for our free message board on LAFB and help keep this thing rolling on. Before we jump into all the recruiting updates heading into Friday, USC LAFB is powered by our friends over at FanDuel. Make sure to check out one of the best sports books out there, plus daily fantasy for those that want to partake in that. Tons of fun. Obviously, no games happening yet. But if you want to get on some action right now to at least have something sitting pretty for the season to start, Jaden Mayava currently sits 12th in odds, plus 2,700 to win the Heisman. You all know how I feel about Jaden Mayava. I think that's a good, I don't want to say good, but I'm not recommending anything. I'm no expert in that regards, but I think that's a fun wager to make to put out there. So FanDuel Sportsbook, you can download the FanDuel app and check that out today. All right, let's start with Honor Fa'alave Johnson, the number one player in the state of California, the number one safety or athlete, however you kind of distinguish him, in the 2027 recruiting class. Rivals just came out. It's crazy to talk about Rivals just because they have everyone now from 24/7 is now on Rivals. There's still, obviously Tom Loy and a few other big national guys are still at 24/7, but a good chunk now are all at Rivals. So they just kind of put out an article giving their best predictions right now in the spring for all of like the 5, I don't know if it was all the 5 stars, but a good amount of all the 5-star 2027 class and kind of where they predict them going. So you have in this kind of prediction, you have Adam Gorney, Greg Biggins, the newest edition of Rivals, Brandon Huffman, Steve Wiltfong, and Chad Simmons, all predicting, again, this is predicting, but all as of now in the spring, predicting Honor Fa'alave Johnson to end up at USC. Pretty much all of them have it as a USC-Oregon race. I think there's a ton of schools involved. He's going to take a lot of spring visits, most likely. Unless, again, as I've always said, if USC can change that and have him, commit during this spring and cancel his visits, that is ultimately what they would love to do. But they all see it as of now, USC firmly in the lead with Oregon still battling, but significantly behind. I feel that way as well, based on just what everyone's saying, but based on who I've talked to as well. I don't see Chad Bowden letting this one get away. I think this is like his Luke Wafel of the 27 class. I think when you look at 26, there was a few of those guys. It wasn't just Luke Wafel. There was, Mark Bowman, Luke Wafel, obviously KDW down the stretch. Booby Feaster was one. But I think when you look at the true, like, hey, this is a guy that even if we overpay for, we don't care, it was Luke Wafel. And you could probably say Mark Bowman too. Probably those two guys were like, we are not letting this guy get away. Mark Bowman happened a little earlier. He was all kind of predicted to like an SEC school, Georgia, Texas potentially. And then USC kind of came out of nowhere, and then he committed like really early on in the spring. Whereas Wafel was in the after his June visit, and then he was trending USC. Then Ohio State came back, and then USC, and basically everyone was like, okay, he's going to Ohio State. And USC and Chad Bowden came back and said, nah, we're not letting this guy get away. No matter what, we will do whatever it takes to make sure Luke Wafel is on campus. We haven't seen him play on Saturdays yet, but I can tell you from being on campus that was a good decision. This kid is a game changer. You can tell. You just hear his teammates talk about him. Braylon Shelby talking about him just yesterday to us after practice. You see him out there, even though it's all we see is individuals. You're going to see this kid is different. And he is 18, 19 years old, a true freshman. So that was one. That's what it feels like with Honor Fa'alave Johnson. This is one that Chad Bowden, no matter what, is not going to let get away from USC. They have the advantage because it's in-state. He wants to play close to home. So it was kind of USC's to lose anyway, with that caveat, with him wanting to kind of follow in Reggie Bush's footsteps. And as long as USC is willing to throw some offensive packages to him along with him playing safety, it was like as long as they didn't mess up the NIL, like they were in a good spot to do it. And I don't think they will mess it up. I think Chad Bowden will get this thing closed out. But, he's going to get wowed by all these other schools. He's going to get persuaded. He's going to get crazy NIL. And to be honest with you, and this is the unfortunate nature now of this kind of free agency NIL, is a lot of these other teams are going to basically use their visits just to drive his NIL to make USC pay more. That's just the reality. Is some of them know they really have no shot, but if they can drive that up and make him go and his agent go to USC and be like, well, I'm getting offered this much from this school, then, USC is going to be like, okay, well, we'll match it. We're not letting you get away. So, that's the unfortunate thing, but all these predictions and based on what I think, he'll be a Trojan in my opinion. I'd be shocked if something changes in that regard. Unless it just the bidding war gets out of control, but I don't see that happening. Eric McFarland. You've heard me talk a lot about Eric McFarland. He's like my favorite receiver prospect. It is now looking less likely to be a Trojan. Doesn't mean it's going to change, or doesn't mean it can't change. Steve Wiltfong just put out the Fong Bomb, as they are so renowned for, and he has get a prediction for Texas A&M to land Eric McFarland. Now, the panel between Wiltfong, Gorney, Simmons, and Biggins are all split, actually. Wiltfong and Simmons are Texas A&M. Gorney and Biggins are for Ohio State to land the talented 5-star receiver from IMG Academy. All of them, for the most part, still mention USC, though, as very firmly in the mix. This is one, to me, different than Honor Fa'alave Johnson. Like, they're not letting Fa'alave Johnson get away. That he's going to be a Trojan, I think. As I just said, for too much time that I should have probably talked about. McFarland is more of a, hey, they'd love to have it. I think they could use him. I mean, we're going to see what Trent Mosley does, and Eric McFarland would be the perfect, predecessor or successor to Trent Mosley. But because they already have McFarland or Woodard and Hale, and because of some of the other receiver prospects that they're also pursuing, it's one that, hey, we want you. Here's the offer. We'll chase in terms of like keep communication open, keep pushing, but we're not going to get into a bidding war. So I don't see any bidding war with McFarland. I got so many names running in my head now. It'd be a nice to have at this point, not a necessity. So I think that's where that stands with that. They'll keep pushing. They'll obviously get him on, or they're obviously planning on him to be in June, I think. The dates are all in my head for his official visit, beginning of June, the June 5th weekend, I think, with Osani Gale, his teammate. But if I were to lean one way or the other, it seems like Osani Gale's is more in the, I don't want to say driver's seat, but it seems like that is more likely to be the third Trojan receiver. Could still be McFarland, but it seems more like Osani Gales or a Damani Warren, one of those two guys, and then go also add like a Charles Davis as your tight end wide receiver hybrid who's got a little bit more height, a little bit more size, and can play both positions, and you got your kind of 4 pass catchers for the class. That's where it's trending. That's where it is with McFarland right now. We will see. You all know where I stand if I'd love to see him end up at USC. And then finally, I'll just want to wrap this up with some additional names that will be visiting this weekend. I did an episode last night on a bunch of guys visiting from stuff that I had heard, and there's been a bunch of guys added to that list since then. So just a little update on that and some big names added as well. But first, Gavin Williams, and this is a very kind of similar story, if you will, to Danny Lang. Like, Gavin Williams was almost a foregone conclusion. We're talking the safety out of Damian and Laverne. It was kind of a foregone conclusion to be USC. Like, it was feeling very confident for a while that it was going to be Aaron Washington and Danny Lang or Duve Williams as your corners and Honor Falave Johnson and Gavin Williams as your safeties. Well, now Notre Dame has crept up in the running for Gavin Williams. And I think the main thing for that, this is one of the residual effects of, losing a position coach. Doug Belk was the main factor in recruiting of Gavin Williams. Obviously, he's the safeties coach, and we know how good of a recruiter he is. We know the relationship that he already built with some of these safety prospects. Doesn't seem that that's had much of an effect on Honor Falave Johnson, just because he's kind of getting the full gamut of recruiting from Lincoln Riley to Chad Savage, and then obviously Bowden and his staff. But Gavin Williams was much more of kind of a Belk firm relationship. And now that Belk's gone with the Broncos, that has kind of softened the lead of USC or maybe even made the lead disappear. And Notre Dame has been able to kind of, come swoop in and maybe even take the lead potentially. Now, what I will say is, Paul Gonzalez, now your safeties coach, taking over that role, and already have, contacted and reached out to Gavin Williams, and I'm sure they're in communication. And I don't want this to just sound like, I'm just all pro every new guy that's here, because you all know how I felt about Doug Belk and those guys. In the short term, though, that I have seen Paul Gonzalez, I don't see an issue with him kind of fortifying confidence in, recruitment with someone like a Gavin Williams. I think Paul Gonzalez, in my opinion, alongside with Sam Carter, who's kind of his assistant, may go down. We got to see it. We're 2 days into camp. May go down as like the most underrated hire in this cycle. I think from the little bit that I've been able to see him, I love his coaching style. I love his attention to details. I love his teaching style and his vocal and his demonstration style that he does in practice.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
And if you're a player like a Gavin Williams and you come visit, which Gavin Williams will, and you see that and you are able to vocalize that, and then you get on the whiteboard after and you're able to talk, I don't see any issue with him being like, okay, yeah, Belk was my guy, but yeah, I see the benefit of a guy like Paul Gonzalez coaching me up too. Like, I can see where I will become a better football player playing for that guy. And I think Paul Gonzalez's resume speaks for itself. Just because he hasn't been at like the big name school, he's had a lot of success at TCU and Baylor and whatnot. So I think it'll end up turning positive and be plenty fine. But for at this moment, seems like Notre Dame has taken a little bit of the lead for Gavin Williams. And on the flip side of that, and then I'll move on, when you bring in new coaches too, they may have a different type of player they want to recruit. I mean, Doug Belk was, Gavin Williams was like a Doug Belk, Danton Lynn real recruit. Now with Gary Patterson and Paul Gonzalez, like maybe, I'm not saying they do, but maybe they're like, hey, we would like to go after a different safety. We see a guy that we actually fits our system better based on how he's played in his role, and we want to go after that guy. So that can certainly change things as well. I will keep you posted on if that does. All right, so finally some additions for this weekend. I talked about, Danny Lang's going to be back on campus tomorrow, so I will see him tomorrow when I am there on Friday. Talked about some of the other guys who are going to be Jackson Roper, the offensive lineman that I really like out of Colorado, being there this weekend. Austin Atala, a 2028 offensive tackle from Cajon, being there. But here's some other names, and some of these names that I've heard from other people, but then also good friend Scott Schrader put this out as well. So give hats off, credit to my good buddy Schrader, who I'll see tomorrow. But probably the biggest, he's already signed, so it's not necessarily a recruit, but Booby Feaster will be here this weekend. He was actually on campus not too long ago visiting. Remember, he's one of the few 2026 signees who did not early enroll in spring, and that always kind of concerns people, and will they be left behind? For those who don't remember, Chinook Hines was not a spring enrollee. He was running track for high school in Texas, so he wanted to finish his senior season, so did not get to campus till summer. Ended up being wide receiver 3 as a true freshman, beating out a bunch of upperclassmen as well. So not saying Boobie Feaster will do that, and obviously you've got a loaded young receiver room, but Feaster, I think, has had this time at least to get in the playbook and, get mentally up to speed. And then we'll just see him. I think he'll physically catch up pretty quickly. Obviously, there will be some adaptation, but I don't think it should be a huge concern. But he will be here this weekend, visiting, hanging out, seeing his teammates, getting acclimated a little bit before he officially, gets here this summer for summer workouts. So it'll be great to see Boobie. Hopefully, I'll get to see him cruising around tomorrow, which I'm sure we will. So, he is going to be good. You look at, these receivers, guys, like I know you've heard a lot, and I know it's only individual drills so far, but Boobie Feaster we haven't seen, but I've said all along I think he has the chance to be an absolute elite collegiate receiver. But being able to see both Trent Mosley and Caden Dixon-Wyatt live and in person, again, it's individual drills against air, so we're projecting a lot here. But they look like special players. Like there is no doubt in my mind each of those two guys will have the ability to start day one in the fall. Now, other guys will have stuff to say about that. Corey Sims is looking pretty strong and promising going into his redshirt freshman year. You have, Zacharias Williams, who obviously is in the slot, but he's going to be battling for playing time over Trent Mosley as kind of going into his, I think what is now his did he get the redshirt last year? I think he did, being injured pretty much the whole year. So he'll be a redshirt sophomore after playing his true freshman season at Utah. Tron Baker has looked pretty good. I know he's kind of the lesser name has been committed forever, but he wasn't as highly touted, but he's a talented player who's looked good so far in spring ball. Luke Weaver has tremendous size and 4.4 speed. So it is a rare combination of size and speed. So it is a talented room as long as they can get over that youth. I know the coaching staff, and there's been a lot of talk of like, hey, we're really not that young. We have a lot of returning stars and this not. That is true. The receiving room is young and inexperienced. Like, that's a fact. So that, of all the rooms, that's the one room that's like, well, yeah, that may be true with the offensive line returning all starters, obviously linebacker returning starters. You got some returning guys that have played a lot in the secondary on the defensive line. The receiver room is extremely young and inexperienced. You have one returning starter, and he's a true sophomore in Chinook Hines. So it's going to be a young room, but if they can get over that inexperience, it is such a loaded, talented room. So anyway, long way of saying Feaster will be there tomorrow. You also have, as I mentioned, Danny Lang. Of the 2027 variety coming on Friday, Jace Cannon, a tight end from Jay Sarah. And then for 2028, Ace Leotelli, 2028 safety out of Mater Dei, and Roy Oliver III, an inside receiver out of Arizona. And then a 2029 athlete out of Bellflower, Austin Miller, and Thaddeus Bro II, a 2029 quarterback from Alexander Hamilton High School. So that is tomorrow. On Saturday, you get from 2027 a bunch of dudes coming. Darius Johnson, safety from Marietta Valley. Luke Wafel's brother, Dylan Wafel, inside linebacker. He's a fun one to watch. I think he's trending. I think Penn State is where his lean is right now, being from Pennsylvania. But hey, a lot of brothers end up playing together. So, and he's a talented backer. You never know. He may love the vibe and love what Luke says and may make his way, and it end up ultimately being, if you're only taking one backer, maybe he ends up being the backer in the 27 class. As I mentioned, Jackson Roper will be here. I said that last night. Josiah Poyer, the linebacker from Bosco, 27. And then one of the commits already in this class, Isaiah Vandermeid, 27, defensive tackle from Santa Margarita. Will be great to see him. And then kind of the big name that USC seems to have lost a lot of steam, obviously trying to pick that steam back up. Marcus Fakatow, who just today, it was announced, transferred from Orange Lutheran to Sierra Canyon. USC has a nice little pipeline with Sierra Canyon. He will be there on Saturday. So that is a big one because they have lost a lot of steam. A lot of people, I said this a week ago, Michigan feels like the favorite. And I'm not saying they followed me, but all the experts have come out and basically put Michigan at the top right now, ahead of Notre Dame, ahead of Ohio State, obviously ahead of USC. So USC trying to play a little catch up there, getting him on campus is a great way to do that. Alan Kennett, the fourth 2028 linebacker out of Santa Margarita. And then Paul Maola, 2028 safety out of Santa Margarita, and Lincoln Fa'alafi, 2028 offensive tackle out of J. Sarah. So that is it for your visitors. A pretty stacked list of 2027, 2028, and even a few 2029 prospects. It's hard for me to even think that far ahead when kids are just going into their sophomore seasons. But that's how recruiting works. You got to start those relationships early. So going to be a busy weekend. I'll be at campus tomorrow. We'll have lots of content coming at you from our What We Saw and What We Heard video. We'll have our interviews after practice, which it should be Lincoln Riley offensive players. Yes, Lincoln Riley and offensive players tomorrow. So you'll have that. I'll have my recap of practice, everything I saw, all of my notes from practice and from the Dairud Dojo tomorrow. And I keep teasing this, but Tim Prengley and I are planning to go live tomorrow evening to recap the entire week, to take your phone calls, to respond to your comments, and to have some fun. So I hope everyone enjoys your evening. It's going to be a stacked Friday. Let's get after it. USC is back. Recruiting is not slowing down. I've predicted 18 commits. I believe will still be a top 10 class with 18 commits. I think they have the ability to be a top 5 class with the type of blue chip players they're trying to add, and with how strongly they sit with a lot of them. So let's see. See you on campus tomorrow. Appreciate you, family. As always, fight on.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.